Well, hello. Welcome again, everybody. Thank you for joining us for yet another edition of Stay Plugged In's Spincast. Joining us today, we have BUBBA GAEDDERT, who is with the Varsity Esports Foundation. Hello. How are you today?
I am great, Rick. Thanks for having me, sir. Glad to be here.
We sincerely appreciate having you on. I am excited about this particular podcast just to get some additional information out to the schools in this area, and specifically, what is esports? How can it help their existing structure, both administratively as well as obviously academically, and including students that have some similarities in terms of liking gaming, socially or competitively. So kind of a lot there, but if you don't mind, why don't you just start off by telling us, who you are, how you kind of got into this space in general, and then what led to Varsity Esports Foundation and what they do. So kind of a long-winded question, but let's start with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. Really, my background is traditional sports. So 20 years with YMCA's, Parks and Recs, Chamber of Commerce, sports commissions. Dove deep into esports about 3 years ago. But my dad worked at Radio Shack when I was a kid. So that means I'm a nerd and a gamer, and I used to build computers and drive remote control cars all over the place at Radio Shack. And then over the years, just kind of used computers as a way to learn, and ran bulletin boards back in the 90s, and video production and all sorts of fun stuff. But I mean, my background is definitely involved into gaming. I'm a nerd of nerds. I've played World of Warcraft since like 2004, December, when it came out, off and on. I definitely like Call of Duty right now because it's fun. And I get to play with all my buddies from church because we don't get to see each other. We play just about every night, and even our wives created a Facebook group, of all our husbands are playing video games at night together.
The church league Call of Duty, love it.
Yeah, it's our community group now. So awesome. Yeah. And really, so 3 years ago when I dove into esports, having worked at a sports commission in Kansas City here, and realizing, hey, part of what my role was to bring in sporting events into town, so football, basketball, soccer, and help people stay in hotels and get facilities. And I realized this could be something, and there's a lot of events going on around the country. Let me try bring one in. So I dove deep into it. I even started holding online tournaments of my own through the sports commission, as the sports commission, and that built up to an event we hosted in Kansas City in 2018. We had like 800 people, and it was a really fun event, but people could come because they won on the online tournaments. So I got really just deep into it, and I met a lot of people in the Kansas City area that actually are really heavily involved. We were real lucky here in Kansas City to have some big organizations. They're just renamed, but they're actually now called, they were Midwest Esports, but they're now called Unified Esports Association. And they run about 150 events a year, and they do a lot of different things. We also have a gentleman named Abdul Yahaya who runs Local Legends Gaming Truck, who also works for the UEA. Then we have the National Association of Collegiate Esports here, run by Michael Brooks, which is kind of the NCAA of esports, but not a regulatory body, more of an onboarding process and kind of league. And then luckily we also have the High School Esports League here in Kansas City that runs with about 3,000 schools across the country, 80,000 students. So we luckily got together and said, what is this? There's a need missing, especially with grants and scholarships to help out low-income students.
Yes.
There's a need to help out those kids in urban and rural that don't have access. The kids in the suburbs get it. The kids in the suburbs have access. Their property taxes help them provide, opportunities and even devices. But kids in urban and rural don't have access to internet at home, or don't have access to even online learning at school. For that matter, if you don't have that, then how can you have an esport club? Right. So esport clubs is the big focus, and really starting that, the foundation was created in December of 2018. And then I came on board last summer after we needed somebody to run it full time. And luckily I've been in this nonprofit world for 20 years, and I guess got a history in it. So I said, I'll do it. And I've been having fun for 9 months, just growing and learning and engaging all around the country and around the world, really, with just supporting as many students we can to be a part of scholastic esports.
That's awesome. That's awesome. A number of things you hit on there. Let's touch on
Mhm,
one. In terms of serving the underprivileged community, so tell me how your organization can help in that respect. So for administrators that may hear this locally,
mhm,
obviously, technology is here. That is a big part of the employment opportunity. And as we continue to grow, obviously, that's going to be an even bigger part of employment careers and so forth. So, being able to get people involved, in my opinion, with esports, there's obviously the technology and STEM
mhm,
components that go with it that I think are critical
mhm,
from a learning perspective. So, how do we get some of those, like, as you mentioned, computers, PCs? What can
mhm.
they do at the local level to try to implement some of those clubs, teams, et cetera?
Sure, Rick. At the local level is a level who work on every day,
Okay.
and I know the high school esports league onboards about 50 schools a week
Well,
with esport clubs, and that's why they're largest and longest running for since 2012. But we get a lot of inbound calls from high schools, middle schools, and colleges like, "Hey, we want to start a club, and we hear about this, and we want to do it. What is it?" First of all, most of the questions are, "What is esports? What are the benefits of it?"
sure.
And those are always common questions. But we have an actual "What is esports" free course that people can take on our website,
Hmm.
and the 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 questions usually are those questions. What is it? How do we do it? How do we fund it? What do kids do? Is it a distraction? Or is there violence in it? So we get to
Right.
talk about that stuff all day long and help people understand the benefits. So if you're thinking about local, a teacher, administrator, a student, they all could be champions for their school. So we get calls from any of those at a school or a school district or even a state, and they say, "How do we do this?" And I say, "Well, here's benefits. Let me give you some numbers.
Hmm.
We know that we've looked at a lot of different research, and we show that at least 97% of students ages 12 through 17 play video games. So if we know that number, and we know that probably covers all the kids who are a part of our school activities,
Hmm.
whether they're football player or in drama or in band, those kids are playing video games. So meeting them where they are is really important.
Yep.
Now, there are a subset of students in schools who don't belong to activities. And we know this because when we have students start competing in esport clubs, we'll survey them and say, how many of you participate in other activities in school? And 82% of them say, we've never competed or never
Wow.
participated in any other activities in school.
Wow.
So what you have, and me, and I'll take this back in traditional sports. For me, understanding the kind of school and club nature of sports, traditional sports, over the past 40 years, less PE, less opportunity to learn physical sports over the years
Hmm.
has grown this subset of kids who don't have belonging and don't have an activity in traditional sports. So when there's when there's less PE and there's less students being engaged with a new activity in PE, like let's say they do a football week and the PE teachers teach them about football. Well, that student has the now like, man, I think I want to try it for football next fall. Well, if you have less of that, they're not engaging and trying out. I mean, this is data that's coming from the National Association of Sports Commissions on PE compared to what's happening in the club space. So when you have less kids trying out, you have less kids participating, and you have more kids growing the subset of kids who don't have anything to do. So yeah, you have those kids those high caliber kids going to play club sports, and then you have then in turn you have stipend coaches coaching football rather than a teacher or a full-time coach. So all these things have started to weigh over the past 40 years. And we look at colleges, they don't recruit from high schools as much as they do as club sports like AAU, USSSA. So there's all this dynamic happening. So then here comes esports. These students, when we know all of them play video games, the football player, the valedictorian, esports is designed in schools for those kids who don't have belonging. So if we know those numbers and we know about the kids who don't participate, now you come in and you provide team building, collaboration, a friend group, critical thinking, and they're competing and playing together against other schools. So you got camaraderie, you got jerseys, and we got 10 kids, let's say, in a club. Well, 2 or 3 of them aren't really the gamers. They could be a shoutcaster, a commentator, or the audio video, or the IT kid, or whatever it may be. Just like in traditional sports, you got a stat kid marking down stuff for the basketball game, water boy, towel boy, equipment manager. You have all those things. So this is what's been beneficial, and it's meeting kids where they are, like I said. But that subset of kids who is now we're helping shrink, those kids, no matter what the activity is, right? If you're giving them access to a friend group, you're eliminating the opportunity for them to hurt themselves or hurt others, really, if you think about it. So it doesn't matter what the activity is. It just, they all play games. And in the club, lastly, there could be a football player and there could be a valedictorian in the club, in the esport club. But it's it's designed for those kids that don't have anything else. And then it doesn't. I get a lot of conversations with sports folks, and they say, "Well, you're just taking kids away from our traditional sports." Well, look at all the kids we just talked about. They
Right.
can be a part of it, but it's not the only thing you're doing, because they're already playing games. So
Right.
it's a fun dynamic. And I'd say with all this stuff, we provide grants and financial assistance for those schools if they are Title I or free and reduced lunch or in low income areas, as well as for nonprofit organizations like YMCA's, Boys and Girls Clubs, that want to do clubs.
Hmm.
So if they are kind of meet that criteria, we will support them financially through donors and grassroots efforts. And if a school is 50% free and reduced lunch, so 50% of the kids are on free and reduced lunch, and it normally costs, let's say, $40 to play in a league like the high school esports league to compete.
Hmm.
Well, then it's 20. So you pay less, and it's what we do to support those rural and urban schools. And then lastly would be equipment. We always start with organized play is important. Get a few kids together and get some Nintendo Switches and play Super Mario Brothers, have a tournament, and raise money for your local hospital. Like, do that as a school first to engage your administration to see how beneficial it is.
Right.
And then do things like our free curriculum, which I can talk about, and then join an esports club. And then if you need support, we've got support for you.
That's great. That's great. That's astonishing. 82%. That's a number I would have never even fathomed. So awesome to have that opportunity to include those kids that obviously aren't a part of something. And that helps, I think, with everything, attendance, academics, et cetera. So help me combat some of those preconceived notions that parents and or administrators have in respect to violence in esports and some of the games that are actually available. Most people probably just kind of see something on the news and assume across the board that's what it is. But why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the games that are out there?
Yeah, well, really in the competitive space for schools, you have different leagues who have similar offerings or low amount of offerings. Our partners at the High School Esport League actually offer 14 different games that students can compete in. And when we look at the games, you've got the Smash Brothers, you've got the Fortnite, you've got the Call of Duty, but you've got things like Rocket League and Minecraft. So schools have the ability to choose what they want to do and what games they want to play. And that's why the bottom-up approach works for leagues like HSCL and what we talk about. Because if you have a state sanctioning saying you must only do these games, not everybody wants to play those. It's just like in band, you don't sanction flute only.
Right.
Kids all have different things, and really, esport clubs are more like track. Every kid, like some of them are 100-meter runner, 400-meter runner, long jump, shot put, whatever. So kids have their goals and their different needs. But when we look at what games are available, and we think about violence in schools, violence in video games, and violence in teens, are they really correlated? Well, we know they're not, because we have Oxford studies and we have the American Psychological Association studies that say there's no link between violence in video games and violence in teens. And we worry about shooting games in school. What's crazy about it is we actually see a benefit of having those games like a Fortnite or a Call of Duty or Rainbow Six Siege, which is one of the top games. Rainbow Six Siege is the most played competitive game in high schools across the country.
Wow.
Because it's a 5-on-5 game where you're breaching a house just like you would if you're on SWAT or you're in the military, and it is a very competitive game. And I mean, think about the critical thinking and what you need to do. I mean, I know military uses games like that to train their military
Sure.
personnel. So it's funny because we see like, oh, loud people say loud things, that video games are bad.
Hmm.
And we perpetuate as a society that kids stay in the basement, drink Red Bull, eat Doritos. But we have all this data and all this proof that clubs for kids is important and healthy and helpful. And it gets them out of the basement. It gets them at home eating healthier, eating with their family, doing their homework because they want to get their grades up so they can compete, just like you and I would when we wanted to have good grades to suit out. It's all
Yep.
the same. It's all the same thing.
Yep.
So violence wise, when parents are worried, ESRB ratings are there for a purpose. Like, yeah, don't let your kids play a Call of Duty game if they're 10 or 8. They should be playing something like Minecraft and learning, and they could potentially be a coder. My 10-year-old loves Minecraft because
Hmm.
he loves to code, and those are things really important for me, I think, for his long-term success.
Sure.
Um, but I'd say lastly in all this, choosing the game that works for your school is really also choosing a game based on what your kids want to play. We always
Right.
ask that, like, engage with their kids and say what they want to play and what they play. They may play Madden and that's it. Well,
Hmm.
great. You may save some money because they have Xboxes and PlayStations they could bring up to school, and they could all compete together and even play online if you allow your IT director to say, okay, we can open the firewall for this room to play video games. So there's a ton of information out there, and we have a lot of it, and we want to share it and make sure people are aware of it. It's really about esports literacy when it comes down to it.
Yeah, understood. And I think it creates a unique opportunity, frankly, because at the end of the day, kids are going to play the game whether it's in school or at home.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
the opportunity is to create a solid foundation through the school networks to say, well, this is the game, this is how you play it, this is what the benefits are of it, these are the good habits you can take and derive from this, versus playing on your own at home against some stranger in Australia who,
Hmm.
who knows what they're doing. So I think there's certainly a lot of advantages to bringing that to the school level, and fostering those good habits, if you will.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, if most administrators are like me to a degree, they're going to wonder, well, I get it. Okay, sounds like there's some positives, but I can't teach a kid how to play this game. I don't know how to play this game.
Hmm.
Where's the support there? What do you
Hmm.
see happening from a coaching perspective, I
Hmm.
guess? Is there typically someone within the faculty or administration that, yeah, hey, I get this, I'll charge up with this? And if so, great. But if not, where do we fall back on?
Well, here's the benefit of esports in schools. One, what you mentioned, or I guess three things. One, what you mentioned is safe environments.
Mhm.
Like, 100% safe environments with a teacher, learning healthy habits, and being part of a team at school. Two, when we talk about the students having access, um, sorry, what was the first? What was the question? I'm sorry.
In terms of coaches.
Coaches. That's what it was. Sorry.
Yep.
So the interesting thing about teachers teaching and coaches coaching is when we look at traditional sports or band. I mean, yeah, those teachers have experience in that. I mean, I even teach at a university because I teach refereeing and coaching because I've done it, and I've been doing it I've been teaching for 7 years, but coaching and refing for 15 years.
Hmm.
So I have the experience to teach it.
Hmm.
What's really interesting about esports is you as a teacher or a coach don't need to know the games because the kids know the games. The kids are going to teach them. The kids have already taught themselves the games. What a teacher or a coach needs to do is be a teacher or a coach in the sense of everything outside the game.
Got it.
That's one side of it. There is with esport clubs, being a sponsor and being a supporter and helping a student deal with a loss or a win or other issues is highly important and engaging and helpful. Telling them they need to go left or right because they see whatever happening in the game, they don't have to know that stuff. The kids are going to start figuring that out and work with other teammates on their team to actually coach each other.
Hmm.
And then lastly, we are happy to provide free curriculum through Dr. Christy Custer and Mike Russell out of Kansas, who created the only free textbook for esports. It's 148 pages. It is a curriculum lesson plan for esports for high schools called Gaming Concepts. It is designed for people like me who are PE teachers to have a esports after school program or a elective a credit class in their school with gaming as the focus. So it's college and career readiness through the lens of esports, but it's not. It's only in the 90-hour time window you use in the class. It's 81 lessons, so only in the 90-hour time. There's only 20 minutes of gaming, but the rest of it is analyzing. Or we have 81 lessons that are about health and wellness, exercise, college readiness, how to build a router, how to build a computer.
Mhm.
And it's designed for people with a rudimentary knowledge of computers, not people who are gamers. If you look at the teachers, I think there's about 100 schools who teach that curriculum around the country right now as an actual program. Many of them aren't gamers. The curriculum itself is on the only curriculum for esports on Microsoft Educator. And it has been downloaded like 100,000 times in 40 different countries because we all just want to provide it for free. And when you look at these levels of who is engaged as a teacher or sponsor or coach compared to actually then using curriculum or then even going on to competing, the benefit here is for you, Rick, as administrator. Anybody who just has an interest in supporting kids could be a part of that esport club. So isn't that everybody, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I look at it too. You make an interesting point. The kids will figure it out. I've got kids that play video games and automatically they may download the game onto their system and they start playing right then and there and they figure it out. Like you said, it doesn't come with instructions per se, but we'll play a board game on Friday night and we'll take 20 minutes as a family, just kind of perusing through all those instructions to make sure we're playing it the right way. So big difference in respect to how quickly they're able to pick up that video game,
right,
plug it in, and immediately start playing it. And through practice is where they're going to get better and better.
Well, to this point, Rick, is esports. I was just rewatching for the 800th time the ESPN commentators laughing about esports over the past 10 years. And the idea that, it was the newspaper caption. It was 4 cells. And one cell was a kid, in his room looking at his TV screen or his computer screen, watching another player on the screen playing a game. And the dad walking in like, "What are you doing?" A third cell, him saying, "I'm watching another kid play video games." And the dad going, "That's lame." And then the final cell is the dad sitting on the couch watching football. So to make that point is also kind of to think about, I have a friend who learned how to play golf because he watched Tiger Woods. So if we think about like kids get online to watch other players learn. I watch Call of Duty players play so I I didn't know I could do that. But how many times we watch YouTube to learn how to fix something in our house? I've watched how to install a dishwasher right as I was installing the dishwasher and yelling at my dishwasher as I put it in. But we have visual learning, right? So when you talk about the kids learning it, they're also going on YouTube and Twitch and watching not only gamers but entertainers, and they find value in that. And so that's the fun part about esports and gaming is people can learn so much from others. And just as much as a baseball player watching a guy pitch and watching his stance and everything, it's all similar. It's just it's its own lens, right?
Yep, no doubt. And I think it's important too. I think a lot of schools, who may be approaching this, may be wondering, well, how does this fit in, and how can we make this work? You spoke about the curriculum. I know I had Dr. Christie and Michael on here a few weeks back, so I know quite a bit about what time and effort they have done in terms of putting together that curriculum. And I think it's a win-win. I think if you take advantage of setting up the foundation in a forward-thinking manner, as opposed to just, hey, we're going to put a club together and throw it out there and let's run with it. But if you really take all of the pieces and components and put together a full esports curriculum club, where students will get a lot more out of it than just the great stuff they get out just from being part of the social gaming club, if you will. But on top of that, the academic portions of it, that's really a win-win, not just for the students, but for the school as well. So for people that wanted to look into a little bit more detail, hey, what are you guys about? Where can we find you? Online, things of that nature. What's the easiest way to get those resources?
Yeah, you can go to varsityesportsfoundation.org. So it's all one big long word, varsityesportsfoundation.org. And we have tons of information about what we do, why we help low-income students, why we provide grants and scholarships for students to go to college. And we just want to tell people like $80 would support one student for a semester of being a part of STEM learning activities. Well, we're STEM accredited. We're the only nonprofit esports organization STEM accredited. And we partner with STEM accredited folks like HSCL and Mike and Christy, who have the only STEM accredited curriculum in esports. So $80 supports a kid to be able to be involved in those STEM related activities, which is that curriculum and gaming and science, technology, engineering, math, all the aspects involved in esport clubs that support those kids later on. So yeah, check us out.
Good deal. And then lastly, in terms of growth pattern, you said you've been doing it for just about 3 years or so. Talk about what it started like in terms of how many schools were interested in partnering in then versus what you may be seeing. And I would suspect it's a substantial increase today.
Well, long-term, short-term, and like the last 2 months is all kind of interesting and relative. I mean, high school sports for esport clubs started in 2012, and that was the kickoff point. And this is why you also have college programs like Robert Morris or a UCI. Like college programs are now started because high school sports were started. That pipeline was there. We're all about pipeline.
Yep.
So I'd say 2013 there was 100 schools playing esports. There's 36,000 high schools in the country. There are 5,000 universities. I'd say let's say with high schools, 36,000 high schools. There's only 3,000 schools that have clubs.
Wow.
It's not even 10%. For administrators out there and teachers, you think of 3,000 as being a low number. Like, oh, there's no way. Like, my school would do it. Well, take another point. There's 3,000 schools doing it, and 50 schools a week partaking in onboarding in the process. So when we look at, was it 1,800 schools around the country maybe 3 years ago we started this?
Wow.
So it's a 3x, 4x kind of thing yearly in esports. But then I identifiably here in the last 2 months, we know that there's still about 3,000 schools still playing or participating in spring semester online competitive esport clubs.
Yep.
Now they're doing it from home, but that's the benefit is you have the coaches can still get on Zoom calls and still coach their kids and connect with their kids. And it's one of the only activities in schools that actually beat COVID to be able to continue. Yep. It's hard to play football. You can do stuff on your own. You can Zoom call, but you can't play competitively. You can maybe have a violin competition, but it's just not the same as, in person. So it is stood the test of the pandemic, definitely. And because of it, it's also, I was just looking at more numbers today, and it is just quintupled. I don't even know what the number would be. I don't know if it needs to be Latin or something. It's just huge. But because of the pandemic, more people are home playing games and more kids are home. But on our side for the foundation, that's where we want to come in and shape the industry and say, maybe it's not good to play 14 hours a day, even though you're home because school's out. You need to play 6 or 7 and be outside and eat with your family. So that's the other things that we focus on is all that health and wellness, digital citizenship, diversity and inclusion, cyberbullying, mental health. Those are important things to us because no one else is really doing it at a national level. So we said, let's get all these people together and talk about helping all these students for sure, because they're the next generation and we have to shape the industry because we must. There's no ceiling. It's growing exponentially, and we're going to be too late if we don't start now.
Yeah, no doubt. And now is as good a time as any because numbers are through the roof in terms of kids getting online and playing games with all this downtime, et cetera. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to kind of marriage the two and say, hey, let's start building those good habits and foundations and try to get into as many homes as possible to educate
Mhm.
those folks as to, hey, this is really the right way of going about it. So last quick question, and we'll let you go. We're pretty much up on time, but social distancing cup. Everyone's looking at the hat saying, okay, what exactly is that? Did you hear me on that?
Social,
Yeah.
I did.
Okay,
I
good.
did. Social distancing cut was an event we partnered with Generation Esports. They're the platform who runs high school esports league, middle school esports league. They do YMCA leagues and other things.
Hmm.
So this was an event we partnered with. It started in April and just finished up last week, and we were a part of it because we brought in the, hey, don't play 14 hours a day, but it was a free event for, I think there was about 3,000 participants across the country
Wow.
who played in free online tournaments. And it was with a queuing system, which is really cool because it was like tournaments can always be a struggle in leagues, and
Yep.
especially online leagues. Even all the leagues that I set up over the years with football tournaments, getting people to show up online in esports is much more difficult because showing up to an online event, you like, oh yeah, I don't want to play today, or I'm sick, or my kids are out of town, or whatever. So a
Hmm.
queuing system is really cool with Generation Esports and what they created. We were on board because we're the nonprofit supporter of it. And what we did is we helped raise money to support Feeding America as well as Human IT. Human IT is a organization that refurbishes computers and gets them out to low income students and kids.
Nice.
So that's a big partnership we have with them to support what they're doing across the country. And they also provide low cost internet access. So that's all the stuff we do. And we would, the more bandwidth we have to support, the more kids we
Yeah.
can support.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay. Well, Bubba, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining us today. We sincerely appreciate what you do, first and foremost, but we appreciate you coming on, certainly. And hopefully a couple members of our audience got some good bits of information and may follow up with you. So, again, appreciate
please.
it. Hope you stay safe. And let's definitely keep this line of communication on down the road. I think the more and more we can at least let people know what's available and what is
Mhm.
out there from a community perspective, I think the better we all are. So we sincerely appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me.
You got it.